£6 million. That is what 1,000 acres of Oxfordshire farmland cost in 2008. A television presenter, still years away from the farm show that would make him famous all over again, signed the papers quietly and told almost nobody, too. That is how many completely different reasons he has since given, on record, for why he actually bought it. Almost nobody caught it. £45 million. That is what the same farm is worth today, once you count the land, the shop, the brewery, and the pub. Because this was never really a story about inheritance tax. It was a story that could not survive being told the same way twice. And the moment it was told a second time, differently, on national television, it revealed something about how this entire operation actually works. By the end of this, you will know exactly which version was true, why the second answer mattered more than the first, and what both of them together tell you about every headline this farm has generated since. If you want the rest laid out properly, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because there are 2 more reveals coming that change how you'll watch every future episode of the show. Doncaster, that is where he grew up, the son of a man who sold Paddington Bear toys for a living, in a house that had nothing to do with farming, land, or agriculture in any form. Nobody in that childhood pointed toward 1,000 acres in the Cotswolds. He built a career on cars, on television, on being fast and loud and occasionally disgraced, and none of it explained why, in his late 40s, he quietly bought a working farm. For over a decade, nobody asked him to explain it properly. It sat there as a strange footnote. A famous man had bought some land. People assumed it was an investment, the way famous men buy vineyards or racehorses, and moved on. 2021 changed that. A journalist from the Times sits down with him for a profile piece, the kind that runs quietly on a Sunday and is usually forgotten by Tuesday. He is asked, plainly, why a television presenter with no farming background bought a 1,000-acre farm in his 50s. His answer is specific, not vague, not deflected. Avoiding inheritance tax, he says, was the critical thing. That quote sits there for 3 years. Nobody in farming media pushes back on it. It is filed under eccentric celebrity purchase and forgotten. The way most throwaway lines and lifestyle profiles are forgotten. But here is what nobody understood at the time. That single sentence was about to become a problem he had built for himself without realizing it. Agricultural land in Britain carries inheritance tax relief that ordinary land does not receive. Farming families have relied on that relief for generations, using it to keep working farms inside the family instead of watching them broken up and sold off to cover a tax bill the moment someone dies. When a wealthy celebrity says on the record that avoiding that exact tax was his critical reason for buying land, he is not only talking about himself anymore, he is handing a live example to anyone arguing that the relief is being used by people who were never farmers to begin with, and never intended to be. That is where BBC Newsnight comes in. Victoria Derbyshire, sitting across from him on camera, brings the 2021 quote back into the room. Not as gossip, not as a passing question, as a direct challenge, his own words read back to him. And then silence while she waits for the answer. Now, here is the part that almost nobody who covered this story at the time fully joined up. He does not confirm it. He does not simply stand by what he told the Times 3 years earlier, the easy, consistent option that any media-trained guest would take. Instead, live, on camera, in front of a national audience, he gives a completely different answer. He bought the land, he says, to shoot. 2 answers. 3 years apart, both delivered with exactly the same certainty, as if each one were the only possible explanation. Everyone watching expected a takedown. The council, years earlier, believed a planning objection gave them leverage over the farm shop. Newsnight, in this moment, believed a contradiction caught live on camera gave them leverage over him. In both cases, the audience did not see what they were supposed to see. They did not see a liar getting caught out. They saw a man refuse, twice, to give the smooth, rehearsed answer, and they liked him more for it, not less. That is the actual reveal sitting underneath this whole story. The contradiction was never a mistake he needed to survive. It was proof, delivered by accident, that nothing about this man is scripted, and the moment the BBC pointed a camera directly at that fact, hoping to expose him, they became unpaid promotion for the exact image the entire farm brand has been built on since day one. It is not a scandal, it is a signature. Stop for a second, because this is the detail that explains almost everything else built on that farm since, and almost nobody has connected it properly. Every genuinely successful part of this operation follows the identical pattern. Say the unpolished thing. Let it look briefly like a mistake. Watch it become the most talked about clip of the week, shared by people who think they are laughing at him rather than for him. The farm shop is the clearest version of this. It opened with just £44,000 in initial assets, a genuinely small operation by any standard, and grew past $1.34 million within its first full year. That growth did not come from a marketing plan or a clever campaign. It came from a local council trying to shut the car park down over planning permissions, turning a small shop selling homegrown produce into a national headline almost overnight. The council believed they were enforcing planning law. In practice, they became unpaid co-writers on a television series that grew more famous with every objection they filed against it. The 16-mile sourcing radius tells the same story from a different angle. West Oxfordshire District Council imposed that restriction as a limitation, a rule designed to keep the shop small and local by force. Clarkson's partner, Lisa Hogan, later admitted it became the best thing that ever happened to the business, because it forced them to find and build relationships with suppliers they would never otherwise have discovered. Suppliers who became part of the story the shop told about itself. The planning condition meant to shrink the business ended up defining its entire identity. The brewery followed the same shape at a larger scale. Hawkstone was never pitched to the public as a slick corporate beer launch with a marketing department behind it. It grew from $7.8 million in revenue to $21.3 million in a single year, 134% growth, while a £50 million acquisition offer from Carlsberg sat on the table in public and was turned down. The wider drinks industry did not see that coming because they were watching what looked like a celebrity hobby project. They should have been watching a business that understood precisely what its audience wanted to see rejected, and rejected loudly. The failure is the product. If you're starting to see the shape of this now, this is exactly why the subscribe button exists. Go ahead and tap it. Because the next part is where this stops being about one interview and becomes something much bigger. Because here is what nobody in agricultural or entertainment media has fully put together. The Times quote and the Newsnight quote were never really about inheritance tax at all. They were the same underlying trick that built the farm shop and the brewery, just applied to his own personal biography instead of a product on a shelf. Say the version that sounds calculated and self-interested. Let someone catch it publicly on camera. Then give the messier, more human, less flattering version live without preparation. Let that second version win the room. You cannot manufacture that reaction from an audience. You can only hand them a real contradiction, refuse to smooth it over, and let them decide for themselves which version of you they actually believe. The pub follows the exact same pattern, just with a different regulator playing the villain. The farmer's dog costs roughly £1 million to purchase and renovate, and now employs 146 people with 360 car park spaces built to handle the crowds. Before it opened, local objections and licensing concerns played out publicly, the same way the farm shop's planning battle had years earlier. And once again, the objections generated coverage no marketing budget could have bought. Nobody objecting to that pub thought they were building an audience for it. That is exactly what they did. There is a genuine unresolved question sitting underneath all of this, and it deserves honesty rather than a tidy bow. The actual reform to agricultural inheritance tax relief remains a live, contested political issue in Britain, one that affects thousands of real working farming families who do not have a television deal or an Amazon payment behind them if the numbers go wrong. Whatever his own private reasoning for buying diddly squat back in 2008, the debate his 2021 quote accidentally waded into is not resolved. It will not be settled by one contradictory answer on Newsnight, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. What is genuinely uncertain is whether the same instinct that has built a £45 million operation out of contradictions and confrontations can survive contact with. Something it cannot outmaneuver, a change in tax law itself, decided in Westminster, with no camera crew present to turn the objection into the next episode. Stand back now and look at the full picture, all of it, together. £6 million in 2008 for land nobody expected him to buy. A first profit of £144 that became a national punchline. £44,000 of shop assets that grew past £1 million within a year because a council tried to shut a car park. A 16-mile sourcing rule built to limit the business that ended up building its entire identity instead. A brewery that turned down £50 million in public and grew 134% anyway. A pub that turned local objections into a waiting list. And running underneath every single one of those moments, the same pattern, repeating itself without anyone naming it until now, say the calculated thing. Get challenged on it, answer honestly instead of smoothly, and let the audience reward the honesty every time. That is not a farming story. That is not even really a story about tax. That is a masterclass in what happens the moment you stop trying to look consistent for the cameras and start letting people watch you actually think out loud. Contradictions and all. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe now. It genuinely helps this channel keep making these, and there's a lot more of this story still to come. I'd love to know in the comments, honestly. Which answer did you believe first? The tax reason back in 2021 or the shooting answer he gave on Newsnight? Drop it below, and thank you, as always, for watching.